stagnant for the most part. And in this league, if you aren't moving forwards, you're moving backwards. This was a big step in the right direction for a team trying to take control of this really tough NL Central with teams like the Brewers and the Cardinals in there. Even though the Cardinals, that's for another day, but their rotation has been just brutal this year. Miles Michaelis once again has given up early runs. He's been dreadful. And then there's Dallas Keuchel. He signed a 1-year, $13 million deal with the Atlanta Braves. This is the perfect example of a team who already has good pitching, but knows there's nothing wrong with doing what you can to improve on it. If someone isn't pitching up to snuff, you're going to get replaced. It's as simple as that, really. When you look at their rotation, obviously you got guys like Mike Soroka, who's been an absolute beast. I was never a real believer in Kevin Gausman, and I was curious to see how Mike Foltynewicz was going to perform this year after the kind of season he had a year ago. So far, not so good. The Braves' starting pitching has been somewhat of a question mark. But you look at Soroka, who's just 21 years old. The thing about Soroka and Fried is that the Braves, they're going to be in an interesting situation when it comes to innings limit and how far into games they're going to have these kids going into. Because, these guys haven't really pitched more than 140, 150 innings. They haven't. They've never been through the regular season in the major leagues. And, they're going to have to make a decision on these guys, and if they're going to shut them down, if they're going to, go to a 6-man rotation, which is possible. If you, make it so that they throw 75 to 80 pitches, start, or something like that, how you can keep them fresh and going as you get closer towards the playoffs, because this is a team that is ready to, take that next step, or at least, right now, it's them and the Phillies going for the NL East. I don't know if the Mets are going to be in that picture later in the year, but the Braves have a chance here to do something because they do have a really good team. Stability is on the way. This is another reason why Dallas Keuchel is such a big pickup for them. Keuchel may not be what he was 5 years ago, Mr. Cy Young, but this is a guy who's battle-tested in the American League, who's pitched in plenty of big-time games, win-or-go-home type of games. Remember his, win-or-go-home game against the New York Yankees. He's pitched in World Series games, playoff games, is a champion. Sometimes when you're trying to win your division, you gotta take chances. The Braves are doing the right thing here in pushing towards the playoffs. Game 4 of the NBA Finals is tonight. At Golden State with the Toronto Raptors up 2-1. Good news for the Warriors is that Klay Thompson is expected to play after sitting out for the entirety of Game 3 with a hamstring injury. I think he's going to be on a minutes limit, but getting Klay back in any capacity is a big deal because, if he can get up and down the court and he can make some threes, that's big it's big for any team, especially a team like the Warriors who feed off of the Splash Brothers, Steph and Klay. Those guys, their energy, like everything that they come out in the third quarter and they dominate, they start to get going because those two start shooting the lights out. Golden State is a very confident bunch, and understandably so. I mean, you heard what, Draymond Green said. All they need to do is win Game 4, go to Toronto, win Game 5, come back and win Game 6 at Oracle, and then celebrate. That is pretty much the mentality of the Golden State Warriors, their fan base, and the whole organization. I mean, I get it, considering they've pretty much dominated the entire league for years and are looking for a three-peat. They need a healthy Klay, though, because Steph Curry isn't going to win these games by himself. He's just not. I mean, he did a great job carrying the load in Game 3. Like, he was fantastic. But to me, there's power, there's strength in numbers. When you have shots falling from everywhere, that's tough. Because, when it's only one guy, when you have to worry about one guy making shots, you can double him and just make somebody else try to beat you. When Steph and Klay are hitting like that, there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing you can do about it. Curry scored nearly half the team's points in Game 3. But running this team through the Splash Brothers, Steph and Klay, that's what the Warriors were built upon originally. Like before Kevin Durant, before DeMarcus Cousins, before all this dynasty happened. But when it all started, it started with Steph and Klay doing things that people never thought were possible. I expect them, with Draymond Green, DeMarcus Cousins, Andre Iguodala, and company, to tie this series up tonight. This is their last year at Oracle. They're moving to San Francisco. And I refuse to believe that they're going to go out like this. Because to me, if they lose tonight, this will likely be their last game at Oracle. Oh, and good for the NBA, by the way, for banning Warriors investor Mark Stevens for a year and fining him like they did. To shove Kyle Lowry the way he did, and I'm sure what he was saying to him wasn't a compliment either. People tend to forget that this is their job. This isn't just a game to these guys. If a customer walked over to an employee at work and shoved them, would that be a problem? Of course it would. Some people forget that these players are people too. And it's also cowardice just because of the fact that that nothing's going to happen to you. The repercussions. It's not like Kyle Lowry's going to turn around and punch him in the face or he's going to get in trouble. He felt like he could kind of go over and kind of shove him just because and yell stuff at him just because he felt like it. I think Lowry showed a lot of maturity with the way he handled that situation. We all need to learn that there are consequences for our actions. Stevens has taken responsibility and apologized since. Just have to be more disciplined than that. This wasn't a kid. This was a grown man who wasn't even involved in the situation. He involved himself. And he's paying the price. Is the price severe enough? That's the question. That's what there are a lot of people wondering. Is this, was it severe enough? Because this guy's a billionaire. So to him, $500,000 is a $200 fine for, regular people. And I mean, but taking him away from the Warriors for a year is at least like that's gonna hit home for him, because this is a guy who is obviously invested big time in the team and goes to the games. We'll see. The Philadelphia Eagles have inked quarterback Carson Wentz to a 4-year, $128 million deal. $107.8 million guaranteed. Whew. I mean, I knew this was going to happen eventually. This was going to happen. But the pressure mounts. I've always been of the mindset that Wentz is the right quarterback for the job. When he was healthy for almost the entire year a couple years ago, in my eyes, he was the MVP. MVP caliber players don't grow on trees. He's still young. He has all the talent in the world. He has two big problems, though. I mean, as we know, Nick Foles was the one who took the Eagles over the top and won the Super Bowl over the New England Patriots. I mean, Carson Wentz took them there. Like, he was the base. Like, he brought them to the playoffs that year. But Nick Foles was the one who showed that he could get them over the top. Carson Wentz hasn't played in a playoff game. So that's a question mark. Now, he needs to get them there. And that's one thing that people are going to be all over him about. And B, Wentz has become so injury-prone that it's nearly impossible to really count on him for a full season. So, it's tough to pay a guy, over $100 million guaranteed for the next 4 years when you don't know how much he's going to play. Like, he'd better be playing full seasons, and he'd better be able to be the MVP caliber player he was before. That's a lot of pressure on a starting quarterback, especially a young kid. A part of a team that, all of a sudden, Nick Foles, the guy that, it's not very often that the guy that won the Super Bowl, a couple years later isn't even with the team anymore. But the Eagles made their decision, and they went all in on it. I agreed with it because you can't pay two quarterbacks like that because it hampers the rest of the team and what you can do with them. You can't pay two quarterbacks because both of those guys were going to, they were going to demand their money. But, I mean, $108 million guaranteed. There is an entire Philadelphia fan base who expect playoff wins and another Super Bowl championship from their talented top draft pick. It's going to be real interesting to see how he is for the next 4 years, how healthy he is, how good he is, how clutch he can be in big games. And if he has the longevity to be able... I mean, there are a lot of questions surrounding Carson Wentz. It's not easy to just go win a Super Bowl. I mean, the Eagles had never done it in their history before a couple years ago, before they did it. So when you think about it, like, expecting him to go win a Super Bowl is not... this isn't some easy thing. Because a lot of teams, Pat Mahomes had one of the best seasons a quarterback has ever had. Arguably the best season a quarterback has ever had. In his first full season. He didn't win the Super Bowl. He didn't get to the Super Bowl last year. Things happen. But the expectations, the bar is raised. The bar is high. And now we have to see what happens with Carson Wentz. that'll do it for me. I'd just like to say thank you to all who are listening.